Okay, so everybody, welcome to this special event commemorating 1 year ago today, a pogrom, the worst pogrom of its kind since the Holocaust. I'm sure everybody who's tuned in knows exactly what we're speaking about. Today, ISGAP is very fortunate to have an incredible group of people that will address this important issue 1 year after the pogrom, and it's at a time, it's perhaps an inflection point where the situation in Israel, in the region, and globally, with the strategic kinetic warfare that's taking place in the Middle East it's a seven-front war, and also perhaps underestimated part of the war is the explosion of anti-Semitism and how actors like Iran and Qatar are using sort of the anti-Israel, anti-Semitism in the West, in our institutions of higher education, as part of the strategic war against the Jewish people and the state of Israel. So today we have incredible speakers. The first person who will speak is Cochav Elkayam-Levy. Cochav established and heads the Civil Commission on October the 7th, the crimes by Hamas against women and children. To add insult to injury, this is a very important issue internationally, particularly in international organizations like the UN and feminist organizations like other progressive human rights entities have not been strong on these issues of October the 7th, its aftermath, the crimes that took place, and the demonization of Israel and the Jewish people. So Cochav's work is very important. The second speaker is Sima. Sima is the director of Iran and the Shi'ite Axis Research Program at INSS, the Institute for National Security Studies. Sima served as a leading Israeli intelligence officer, and she was the head of research and evaluation division in the Mossad from 2003 to 2007, and her career and accomplishments are great. So Sima, thank you for being here. The next speaker will be Rabi. Uzi will join us momentarily. There were some alerts in Israel, and I believe that he'll be joining us after everything is clear from where he is. Uzi was the director of the Moshe Dayan Center for Middle East and African Studies. He's a professor of Middle East history at the Department of Middle East and African Studies at Tel Aviv University. He's also connected to the Center for Iranian Studies at Tel Aviv University, and he's one of the senior research fellows associated with ISGAP. And I'm also pleased that David Harris will be joining us. David is the executive vice chair of ISGAP, and as many of you know, he served as the head of the American Jewish Committee from 1990 to 2022. And as Shimon Peres said, he was the Jewish ambassador, or the ambassador for the Jewish people for many years. And it's wonderful that David is with us this afternoon, this evening, this afternoon in the Middle East, and this morning in Israel, in the United States. So David, thank you for being here. So we'll start with Cochav. The floor is yours, and each speaker will speak for about 12 to 15 minutes, and then we'll have about 30 minutes for Q&A. So the floor is yours, Cochav, and thank you for being here and all the work you're doing.
Thank you so much, Charles, and thank you all of you for joining this evening. We just heard sirens here, so I don't know if I'll have family members joining me. I mean, speaking from the safe room. And I also want to start by saying that this is a difficult day to speak. I feel like it has been extremely emotional in the few events that I've participated in. So I just feel the need to apologize in advance. Really, I think the best way to start is perhaps just to tell you that before the 7th of October, what I do is that I teach international law, human rights, feminist theories, global climate justice. And we found ourselves really shocked on October 7th and the first week, understanding that the international community and specifically UN organizations that we have believed in for so many years, despite the fact that perhaps some of you are cynical of the UN system, I believed in it. I believed in the importance of a human rights system that was established from the ashes of the Holocaust, from World War II. I thought of the importance of this system for women's rights globally. And so after seeing the horrific crimes and the scenes from October 7th, I was quite shocked not to see a global response, especially to bring back our hostages and to act swiftly for their return. And I thought very naively, I must say that I must admit that perhaps they don't have enough information. Perhaps they need us to somehow communicate to them the horrific scenes that we're seeing, the numbers, the statistics, whatever. And I gathered a group of experts in international law, human rights. It was the second week after the attack already. And when we understood that there is no clear condemnation, very confused statements. Someone told me not to use the word confused because it probably was deliberate, but very confusing statements about what occurred here. And we thought, okay, we're gonna draft document the information. We drafted it on the first week already, addressing what is our expertise: crimes against women and children, the most vulnerable populations, and specifically, as I said, we wanted the UN to act swiftly for the return of the hostages. So these three documents, we sent a petition in the name of the civil society, a petition in the name of women, wherever they are, in a very brief legal report that I drafted with the help of other experts, signed by more than 180 international law professors. And to prepare this brief, I felt the need to bear witness myself, to see with my own eyes, to make sure that we know what we report on. And that was a shocking moment already. Today, I'm a bit angry of the fact that, looking back now, a year afterwards, I feel a bit of angry that we were forced to expose ourselves to such traumatizing materials. Anyway, by the end of the week, 3 documents signed by thousands were sent to every UN agency responsible for women's rights and children's rights. And let's say that we waited. To make a long story short, they didn't respond. We found ourselves really amazed that we're not getting any response, sending more and more communications. 3 weeks later, I was invited to the UN, was invited at a regular session, and we decided to use that session to represent the women's movement. And we decided to use that session to highlight the gender-based crimes. And a day before that speech, it was 3 weeks after October 7th, the committee responsible on the elimination of discrimination against women released a statement not mentioning October 7th, not mentioning our hostages, and it felt like a huge betrayal. I'm sharing this because it was a beginning of a journey, to of understanding, a deep understanding that they are failing. They are failing us as a people. They are, by the fact that they were not able to express minimal solidarity with the human suffering that we've seen here, and this lack of ability to express solidarity with the human suffering in Israel, to represent it, to represent the victim, keeps repeating till now, just made us realize that perhaps we're not considered as human. I remember one of the sayings that kept repeating in my head: are we even human? Why aren't they being able to show some kind of empathy? And I delivered a speech a day after that statement, pretty shaking, of what happened. I asked them, is there international law for Israeli women? Are you going to protect us? You're inflicting on us the same denial mechanisms that are usually inflicted on women. And I was, because this conference is about anti-Semitism, I want to emphasize that very quickly we understood that there is much deeper explanation to what's going on here. And of course, we understand we're seeing deep anti-Semitic sentiments now being used by the UN to do two things. One, dehumanize us, and secondly, demonize us. The UN system very quickly, the social media of the UN was used and abused to demonize us as a people. And that was a difficult realization. With that understanding, we decided to take action. First, we understood that we have to document everything. We have to start collecting every piece of information in light of the denial and the hatred that we have already seen. And so I established a civil commission on October 7th crimes against women and children. We have decided to establish an archive that will last for generations to come. So the truth, the historical truth on what happened here, especially to women and children, would not be erased. Today, the head of the archive is the former deputy head of the Yad Vashem archive, an amazing expert. And secondly, we went to a second battle. We started a global campaign for the recognition of these crimes, understanding that the UN is not responding and we have to get recognition to what happened here. We started on a journey that is in many ways even diplomatic. We met with prime ministers, foreign ministers of different countries, establishing recognition outside the UN. And I'll give an example. Early December, I've been to the White House and I briefed the White House staff on gender equality. And the same day, the White House released a statement recognizing the crimes, condemning Hamas for the sexual abuse, and also supporting our work in documentation. And it was really one of the hardest moments, but also our hardest moments, understanding that we have to go state by state to establish this recognition, to give voice to the victims. And so what is important for me to stress that happened next is that after reviewing many materials, of course, we started seeing repeating patterns of brutal sexual abuse, brutal crimes against women and children, and also those in captivity. But what happened next it was something that I didn't expect. As I said, after reviewing thousands of materials, we started identifying, I'll say, materials with women and children. We started identifying abuse of families. Family after family, we saw, of course, as you all know, the murder of children in front of their parents, the parents in front of their children, abuse of family members in front of one another, kidnapping, separating fathers from their children, mothers from their children. And we saw it repeating in different locations as well, calling international colleagues at the time, asking them, have you heard of such thing? Abuse of families, weaponization of families, such violence against families. It's really the hardest videos of Hamas that we have in our possession. They film themselves entering the houses, terrorizing the family. The parents look terrified. Sometimes they just witness the murder of their children, and you see the siblings crying. And it's really, if I usually say that if there is hell, this is how it looks like. Someone abusing your kids. And so we found ourselves really defining a new form of evil, a new category of war crime we call kinocide. Kin as in familial relationships, side to really represent the weaponization of families and the deliberate action by Hamas. And I'll end with just with I'll try to be, I don't know, I want to be hopeful this day. I think summarizing this journey or this year, I'm proud of the fact that we fought to give voice to the victims, and I'm proud of our people. We've been to many countries, and each time we met the Jewish community, and I found a strong community. We've become stronger as a people. I can cry just thinking of that. I found that we can be proud of ourselves and on all the actions we've done throughout the world. We've all changed after October 7th, but really, I think even here in Israel, you see the civil society uprising to the challenge, working to do their best to help each other. And despite our divisions, I'm hoping that we'll see a better future. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Cochav. Thanks for all the work you're doing. I know it's difficult, but so essential, and to give voice to these issues is very important. So thank you. Thanks for being here. And I'll just say very briefly, I was at a teach-in at Columbia University where there were professors of gender studies, feminist scholars, literary critics, and they were basically, these were professors at one of the best universities in the world with doctoral students. These were literate scholars at the top of their profession, and they were basically arguing that what happened on October the 7th, including the issues that you've just described, is a form of resistance, and that all resistance is justified to end the occupation. So there's an intellectual movement, voice in academia that's affecting policy and public discourse that is calling for to eradicate the state of Israel and to justify it in the most horrific terms. And this is a legitimate framework in the best universities in the Western world. So we're really kind of facing this ideology in academia in the West. And as Sima knows, and Sima will now present, that the ideology, which I think many of us have underestimated, certainly in the West, the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, of the Iranian revolutionary regime, of Hamas and Hezbollah, the way they perceive the Jew and Israel, I think is very important for people to understand. So in light of that, thank you, Cochav, and the floor is yours, Sima. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is a very difficult day, as Cochav has said, to each of us from different angle, but of course, first and foremost, from the point of view of what happened to so many innocent people. Let me start by saying, and I hope some issues I will not touch will be touched upon by questions. I'll start by saying that even though it seems that Iran didn't know that on the 7th of October, Hamas will start this attack on Israel, the attack itself and the whole environment that we see in the last year is part of a plan that was motivated, planned, was equipped, was trained, was financed by Iran. So I would say there are many that ask me, did Iran know about the 7th? Did they tell Hamas to do it? That's not important. We know that Iran for years was planning, was first of all established those militias, the proxies in the region, then combined them together. In the last 3-4 years, there was a war room in Beirut that Iran brought all the representatives of all the militias in the region in order to cooperate. After each of them was established quite well within its state and within the political system in its state. And actually what Iran has done was to build, since Iran doesn't have a common border with Israel, and since they didn't have other ways to see how they attack Israel or how they respond to things that they have said Israel has done, they established this kind of what we call the ring, the fire ring around Israel, and were hoping for two aims. One was in order to prevent, at the beginning, was to prevent Israel from attacking Iran, since Israel was talking about the possibility of attacking the nuclear project. And the second was to strengthen those militias within the political system in their countries, and by that to enlarge the influence of Iran in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Yemen, in everywhere where those militias were part of the political system. We saw the same pattern of, first of all, creating a military militia, and then when it is established and strong enough, transferring it into a political party to be part of the political system. So what we saw in the last year, I don't want to go to the past, I prefer to go to the future and to the present and the future. And let me say very briefly, how does Iran sees the balance sheet of the last year from its point of view? And I would say it's a mixed one. And it's important to try and understand it in order to make our conclusions as to what will be the future, and we are in a very, very delicate moment in time. Israel is before a response on Iran on the last attack a week ago. No question it will happen. The only question is when and how. So we are and the Iranians are threatening to respond. So we are in a very delicate and tense point in time where things might escalate into a much wider scale of a war in the Middle East. When we look on the balance sheet, let me just mention 2, 3, not more, on the positive side and on the negative one. From the positive side, from Iran's point of view, not of course to make sure everybody understands, is the fact that first of all, Iran didn't pay directly anything for initiating all this year of attacks on Israel from all fronts. Iran continues to promote its nuclear program. Nobody pays too much attention to that. From time to time, there is a declaration of the IAEA, but nothing dramatically is happening in this regard. The normalization process that was on the way between Israel and Saudi Arabia was stopped. It is not, I'm sure it will come back in the future, but for the time being, it has been stopped, as well as the defense agreement between the US and Saudi Arabia, which was very important, very negative in the eyes of Iran. And of course, the question of the decision of Iran to cross the Rubicon and to attack Israel already 2 times. So this what Iran sees to itself as an achievements of the last year. On the other hand, from the negative point of view, and one has to remember, first of all, before the war and not connected to the war, Iran is in a very difficult economic situation, very difficult, which brought the new president to come with all those suggestions last weeks in New York to suggest a new dialogue on military or a nuclear agreement in order to try and see if it's possible to remove sanctions of Iran. It's not because they want to do any new agreement, it's because the economic situation is very harsh and sanctions are very part of the problems. At the same time, they didn't succeed what they wanted from the very beginning, and that is to stop the war. Iran wanted from the second day to stop the war so that the achievements of Hamas will be strong, big, wide, and the suffering of Israel and the balance between Israel and Hamas will be on the side of Hamas. It didn't work in spite of all proxies attacking Israel. The aim of stopping the war, which is until today, didn't work. So that's a very important element because it shows the ceiling glass of the capability of the system that Iran has built in the region, the system of the proxies. The second point is, of course, the re-emerging of the American forces in the Middle East. One of the major aims of Iran was to make sure that the US is getting out of the Middle East. And they were very happy to listen to the last administration, not the last one, but also Trump, also Obama, and also Biden, talking about shifting from the Middle East to Asia. Bringing back all those forces, all those marine forces and all the airplanes and all the capabilities that the US has brought to the Middle East is a very negative development for Iran. And I combined that to a much more important element, and that is the regional anti-missile system that was operating in the two events where Iran attacked Israel. This is the nightmare of Iran. They wanted to prevent it. They saw that by preventing the normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, they also prevent the cooperation in the region, and they see it doesn't work. So from their point of view, it's not only that their attack on Israel has threatened all the Gulf states, in spite of the fact that they are improving on the surface their diplomatic relations and their cooperation with Iran, it's threatened them to death, to understand that Iran is willing to use its military capabilities, not only on Saudi Arabia in 2019, but also against Israel. And I think this element of the US back to the Middle East and the regional anti-missile and aircraft system is a very, very negative element. I stop here with the balance sheet because I think there are some others, but those are the most important ones. And I want to allocate some sentences to the issue of Israel-Iran. I think it's the most important element today. We are on the brink of Israeli retaliation and probably an Iranian one as well. And what is important here to say is that by deciding, first of all, that many of our I would say, beliefs from the past, that the leader is the one who is very cautious, he is a little bit moderate on bringing Iran into military activity, prefers the proxies to operate and not Iran directly. Many of these perceptions were wrong with them. And Iran decided twice, in April and now a week ago, to retaliate. There are a variety of reasons why they decided to do it, and I don't want to get into it because what is more important is the fact that they decided to do it. And of course, it represents the willingness to take risks vis-a-vis Israel, an estimation that the US will not be will not be involved and will not attack Iran, which is a major issue in the evaluation of Iran before it decides on such an attack, and the understanding that the deterrence of Iran has collapsed and has suffered in the last year, and that they have to, in order not only vis-a-vis Israel, but also vis-a-vis their own people in Iran. I want to say that to summarize this issue by saying, I believe and I understand from everything we are reading and seeing in Iran that the debate on whether to attack Israel was a real one and took quite impressive decision-making process. And at the end of the day, the upper hand was the upper end of the IRGC, and the leader accepted it. Is it because he's also speculation because he's old and the IRGC is has a more upper end in the decision-making process, or other reason? That's not important. What is important for us as Israelis and everyone that looks on Iran is to understand that there is a different way of thinking and operating in Iran. And in spite of all restrictions and in spite of all pressure that was put from the US and from Europe, probably not good enough, they decided to go for this attack. My last sentence will be saying that my evaluation is that from Iran's point of view, the deterrence is not a complete one. And when the war is finished, the voices that we already hear in Iran talking about the need for a nuclear deterrence will come up again and again. And the question that will be put before the leader and the political establishment will be whether to go the extra mile, which is not anymore a technical one, but a political one, and to acquire a military nuclear capability. And once it happens, of course, we hope it will not happen. We hope that somebody will stop them on the way. But if it happens, it changed the whole balance sheet in the Middle East. I stop here. Thank you.
Okay. Sima, thank you very much for your insights and wisdom on this complicated and timely issue. So thank you. Next up will be Professor Rabi, Uzi Rabi from Tel Aviv University. And then it'll be David, and then we'll have Q&A. So trying to have the Israeli perspective and then David from the international American perspective. Uzi, the floor is yours.
Hi, Charles. Thank you
Hi.
for inviting me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you well. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, sorry for having my mobile phone. I mean, there were sirens here and, you know, I am on the move. So I hope you hear me well. And what I would like to do, Charles, is just to, come up with some main observations as to what should be paid attention to while looking at our, ever-changing region and the war, which today, actually, this would be kind of a whole war which passed by, and, it's high time to just glean some conclusions. So here is the thing. So it started 1 year ago with these atrocities in Gaza. And, it was named here and there as kind of a war that should be confined to, two locals fighting each other. But soon it became clear that this war is being turned into a multi-frontal war. Of course, Iran was there all the time. What we had seen is a network of proxies with this firing that was to suffocate Israel. And this was kind of an architecture which was planned by Qasem Soleimani for decades, by which to have proxies everywhere and create kind of a situation where Israel is being dragged into a war of attrition, as is the case, and Israel has to confront not kind of one belligerent, but several ones. That's the basic idea of a multi-frontal war. I think that what we have seen, and now we can speak about that, it's a year after when Yahya al-Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, from his bunker in Gaza, is thinking of kind of a hostages deal or not. He would definitely rather have the possibility or option of a multi-frontal war between Iran, Israel, and proxies. And frankly, this was his, main target or destination from the outset. So here we are in something that has to do with the region, not to say the globe. And this is kind of a war that should be turned and be defined in a different way in order to understand actually what the stakes are and how volatile the situation is. Second, what happened in the recent month is a change which surprised everybody. To some extent, even Israelis were surprised by that. Israel, after 24 years, has took the lead and took control over the rhythm of events, by which to come up with a set of attacks on Hezbollah of a phenomenal magnitude. I'm talking about the walkie-talkie explosions, the elimination of Hassan Nasrallah, Hisham Safi ad-Din, and some other figures or figureheads of Hezbollah. This was kind of an effort that was resulted, and I be careful actually in estimating the results, but some would say that half of the ballistic ability of Hezbollah was damaged, and not to mention the leadership of the organization, and that there is sort of a chaotic situation when it comes to Hezbollah. What we did see in the recent weeks is how the pattern, Iran, is getting into the scene in order to try to recuperate Hezbollah in a way. We don't know yet, but it seems that also Ismail Qani, which replaced Qasem Soleimani, and he is the force of the head of Niroye Quds of Quds force in the Revolutionary Guards. He might be that too, but we'll have to wait. But Iran is, I would say, raising up its amount of gambles as to try to rescue some of its, I would say, arms. If we define Iran as an octopus, every proxy would be an arm of that, and the most prominent of which would be definitely Hezbollah. So Iran is becoming much more engaged in the whole thing. In my opinion, this is the reason why Iran, unexpectedly, I must say, chose to attack Israel, sorry, with ballistic missiles. Everybody is expecting Israel to respond. This time, the response would be, in my opinion, much more lethal than the previous time. But the bottom line should be that Iran is being deterred one way or the other as to not go on with the tit for tat when it comes to ballistic missiles. At the same time, and paradoxically, the fact that Israel actually came back to its senses, if I may say so, and became proactive, as I said, after 24 or 20 years of almost doing nothing, when it comes to Gaza or Lebanon, just actually, it almost was a little bit more than fence sitting, containing almost everything, and living under the impression that time will actually solve out the problem. This did not happen. The 7th of October, of course, is a watershed in Israel's history by many, many means and respects. We don't have time to delve into it, but you understand that Israel is going to become, from now on, be familiar to Israelis as one Israel is the pre-7th of October, the second is the post-7th of October, two different Israels. I'm pretty sure that Israel currently is being changed and the process is moving on. But look at what happened here. Israel took the initiative, came up with some phenomenal operations by which to really, really damage and hit Hezbollah and, of course, Hamas before. This has become kind of a reality that everybody in the Middle East has to be well aware of, not to mention some international powers. And as by irony, actually, what happened here is the creation of kind of an opportunity to change the geopolitical architecture of the Middle East. I don't suggest that Israel should do that by itself, of course not. Israel should deal with the problem in Gaza and of course in South Lebanon and beyond in Beirut, and it works hard. On top of that, of course, there is the response to Iran. But what I'm trying to say is that many Arabs in this region, especially leaderships, and I'm talking about Saudi Arabia, Emirates, to some extent Jordan and Egypt, or Morocco, of course, Bahrain, Israel, of course, got the sense that there is a real opportunity to minimize the dominance of Hezbollah in Lebanon and maybe rescue Lebanon. It seems far-fetched from what we, or the point we stand on. But basically, if the international community is going actually to use those platforms that were created by Israeli operations as to just bring some salvation to Lebanon, I don't know if that could happen, but it depends on France, on the United States. Until this moment, actually, there is no much hope of that, because everybody, as you know, is dealing with his own problems. America with the elections, France with its pressures from within, what Macron, the French president, actually has gleaned from all these, I would say, operations and situation in the Middle East, is just to put the blame on Israel and talk about embargo in Gaza, ceasefire in Lebanon. Well, these things actually we are well familiar with. This happened actually all over the recent decades. And basically the West is to be blamed for making it sort of an eternal reality where the bad guys are being, installed by Iran in every failed state. And instead of actually dealing with that in kind of a direct manner, what the superpowers would like to have is just to buy some more time, or I would say peace of mind or something like that. But here the problems actually comes to be monstrous. We talk about the Iranian nuclear capacity, and there should be kind of an action to be taken by the free world. If there is a free world, if there is a free world that would actually is keenly aware of what's going on in the Middle East. I mean, in a way, when you look at Israel's actually struggle against this whole front, which are fraught with, I would say, perils that are being expressed by Iranian proxies, you got a sense that this is a different sort of war. It has to do with the future of the Middle East. The question to be asked is whether those bad guys are going actually to prevail and dictate the rhythm in the Middle East, or Israel, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and some other Arab states are going actually to, in fact, to collaborate and create kind of a coalition through which to have things actually be turned around to the other side. We'll have to wait and see, but without, I mean, on top of the sorrow or the horrors and the agony we do experience in this Middle East, especially Israelis at this moment, I think that there is a glimpse of hope that might be paid attention to. And I hope that this would create kind of a path to a little bit different, I would say, path to future Middle East, which would herald something different than we used to have. Look at Yemen, look at Syria, look at Lebanon, look at Iraq, look at Libya in a sense. All these states are fragile and failed states. They became kind of no man's land. Revolutionary guards for 30 or 40 years actually have capitalized on that and created kind of a situation where the chaos is preserved, by it is being managed by Iranian proxy in all these states. This is very threatening to many, many Arab states, especially leaderships. And I would recommend reading actually the words of bin Farhan, the Saudi foreign minister today, when he tries to explain what the main problems are in the Middle East. Of course, in the West, there is just one problem in the Middle East, which is called Palestinian state. Well, even bin Farhan says that the main problem here is what he calls actually bad guys, good guys, kind of a binary dichotomy by which to understand what the war or the struggle is about. Of course, there must be kind of a dealing with the Palestinian issue. That goes without saying. But to say that this is the only thing and to just put behind all these struggles between Sunni and Shia, Iran and Arabs, proxies, states that were kidnapped by criminals, all these things actually are getting kind of a backlash, in a way, I would say. We are listening carefully to the voices coming from Lebanon. Many Sunni, Druze, Christians are thrilled of the eventuality of eliminating Nasrallah and Safi ad-Din. We are looking carefully or following carefully at what's going in Iran. I'm not sure that the Iranian people are having the capacity to go for the regime.
Uzi, could you take
But
like one more minute to wrap up? I'm sorry.
yep, sure. But this is something that we have to just bear in mind. The deeper the friction is between the regime and public in Iran is, the better for delegitimizing the regime. The more the problems between Hezbollah and the people of Lebanon are grow, this is something which could be a recipe for a change in Lebanon. Now, Israel is going to do the stuff that it has to do for its own survival. But if you look at the world, this is high time for the world to just capitalize on those new developments and try to create a little bit different Middle East. This is the hope. And there could be kind of a positive development. Charles, I'm sorry that I have to go. I told you before, and I can't actually stay for the Q&A. But as I always say, I would be very happy to take actually whatever, correspondence coming from participants and just to exchange views with everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Uzi. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And I'll just say very briefly, I remember listening to you more than 15 years ago, and you were speaking about the emerging Shiite crescent and the, crumbling of the old map, this 6 Pico map, and this new reality. And people were looking at you skeptically. And I think what you were writing about 15 years ago, sadly, has come to fruition as we speak. And I think you also raised an important issue. Iran and Hamas attacked when Israel was on the verge of signing a peace agreement with its Sunni neighbors. So I'm sure that that's related to this situation. Yeah. So Uzi, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you so much.
Stay safe. That. And so David Harris, the Executive Vice President of ISGAP, kind of from outside of Israel, reflections on October the 7th. David, the floor is yours, and thanks for being here.
Thank you and ISGAP, and I'm privileged to be on the same panel with Sima and Cochav and Uzi, and learned a lot on this extraordinarily difficult day for everyone beginning in Israel. I begin with the proposition, Charles, that for the American Jewish community, the October 6th playbook must be discarded. I've been saying so for 1 year now, and must be replaced by an October 7th playbook. Easier said than done, but absolutely necessary. Number one, it's clear to me that there has been a shortage in Jewish education in the United States, and particularly in the meaning of Zionism. And institutions that were content to focus largely on external matters, on social justice questions, on other important ethical issues, need to make room, much more room, for the meaning of Zionism and for the contemporary meaning of the relationship between the two largest Jewish communities in the world, Israel and the United States. And we have to understand here that to be a Jew today in the United States, especially a young Jew, whether in school or university, could entail risks that were previously unimaginable in the United States. And therefore, in order to, if you will, strengthen and fortify young Jews to stand up for what we collectively wish to believe, they need to understand Semitism long before they understand anti-Semitism. We have to work from the inside out and not from the outside in. And that requires a massive overhaul, I believe, in what goes on in synagogues, in Jewish day schools, in after schools, and especially, of course, in Jewish homes. Number two, if it wasn't already clear, and it should have been abundantly clear beginning in 1947-48, America is Israel's one indispensable superpower ally. And I know that sounds obvious to those on this call, but we've been reminded yet again that the role of the United States in the life of Israel is irreplaceable. And we also have been reminded that our adversaries, if you will, in the United States have long sought to drive a wedge between Washington and Jerusalem. And those of us who've been saying this for many years were largely dismissed because others suggested that this relationship was not in danger. Yes, every administration since Truman had issues with Israel, but at the end of the day, and especially in recent administrations, the basic line of the administration was in support of the U.S.-Israel relationship. That is now coming under increasing tension, and we need to be reminded that just a few blocks from where I sit in New York, the UN Security Council, which is the one UN body with legally enforceable power under Chapter 7, if it so chooses, could impose legally binding restrictions on Israel that the world would be obligated to comply with and force Israel into a kind of massive clandestine operation to bypass. And the one country that stands between that potential prospect and where we are today is the United States. China and Russia, why waste my breath? France, we've just seen, as we did in 1967 with Charles de Gaulle, once again, the fact that notwithstanding the protestations of French friendship and Israeli misunderstanding of French friendship, that France was prepared, as Professor Rabi said a few moments ago, to declare that this is the moment to consider an arms ban. And Britain, which under the previous government had largely been very strongly pro-Israel from October 7th forward, has now reversed itself and considered selective arm bans, withdrawn some of its petitions from international organizations in defense of Israel. That leaves one country, the United States, and only one country. The stakes here, therefore, could not be higher than they are today. And again, I repeat that the battlefield for public opinion and political decision-making in the United States is shifting before our eyes for reasons of demography, for all kinds of other reasons. It's a fact. And if Jewish organizations continue a policy of a kind of confidence, maybe borderline complacency, that what was will continue, we're going to find ourselves facing some even more difficult situations. And we have some warnings. Perhaps the most powerful warning today is the fact that one political party believes or has been convinced that the road to success in November and the White House entails finding a balance between pro-Israel and, I cannot say pro-Palestinian without saying /pro-Hamas elements in the United States, particularly revolving around electoral politics, beginning with the state of Michigan. So American Jews who kind of went off to vote thinking first and foremost about a whole host of universal issues, social issues, I admire it. For many years, I was one of them. But we have to understand that unless we start to play our political cards more smartly, and I say this as a nonpartisan who spent 50 years of my life trying to engage both political parties, understanding the pendulum swing, that we may find ourselves down the road, not today, but down the road, witnessing more of the Israel pendulum swings that we see now in Britain, or that we see in certain other Western countries, Canada, Australia, that were previously unimaginable. Moreover, and here credit to ISGAP, Charles, and to you in particular, we have now come to understand better than before that Qatar has been successfully playing all sides of the playing field. And yet, under the Higher Education Act, Section 117, all foreign donations above $250,000 to American universities must be reported semi-annually to the US government. You have revealed that by and large, these provisions are being ignored. And you have also revealed that the single largest foreign funder to American higher education today is indeed Qatar, a country of some 300 to 350,000 citizens, thousands of miles away from the United States. And the question must be asked, why? Why does Qatar have such a vested interest in trying to shape American higher education? And notwithstanding their attempt to present this simply as a benign, selfless humanitarian gesture, some of the proof is in. Not all of the encampments, not all of the indoctrination can be attributed to Qatar on American campuses. But surely we cannot blithely say either that there is no connection. And ISGAP has been trying to demonstrate the connection between both discourse and activity. The job of the American Jewish community, I believe, and our friends, is to continue to press each administration and both houses of Congress on exactly why this is. Moreover, with Iran, and here I don't pretend to be nonpartisan, as one who opposed the deal in 2015, who thought it was a weak, porous deal, we nonetheless continue to watch US government policy towards Iran being reactive far more than proactive, seeking de-escalation for fear of escalation, but without an end game other than, I would argue, an end game of delusional, wishful thinking, nothing else. And I think we have an obligation as a community in order to take up these issues. Now, to be very honest, not easy. Not easy in the current climate, and not easy when there will be those who are quick to assail American Jews for trying to whip up war fever in the United States, create new enemies like Qatar, which so generously supported American universities, or trying to create a war with Iran. I recall Ben Rhodes, the right hand to President Obama, who tried to create a kind of binary approach to the Iran deal. You either support peace or you support war, when many of us believe there was a third way. But I do believe that this is an essential part of the agenda. And here I come to what I think is a terribly important point in the October 7th playbook, Charles. And that is, we dare not seek to isolate ourselves or purport that these are issues exclusively of interest to American Jews or the pro-Israel community. I think that would be a catastrophic strategic mistake. There are a majority of Americans, generally, I believe, who understand the true nature of Iran, the true nature of the Muslim Brotherhood, the true nature of radical Islam, which they're capable of distinguishing from moderate Islam. And we have to join together. We have to make the case far more effectively and not just rhetorically that what we're facing on October the 7th and every day is not just a proprietary war against the Jews or Zionism or Israel, though it is. It is a war on Western liberal democratic values. And in the crosshairs of the people we're talking about, Europe, the United States, and as I said, our value systems are very much an integral part of that. So Israel may be the first step, it's not the last step. So we have to think allyship in a new way. We have to also reassess people we thought were our allies prior to October 7th. Cochav spoke earlier about the failure of the UN system, the failure of women's groups, the failure of children's groups, who somehow believe that Israelis or Jews perhaps are, to borrow from American jurisprudence of an earlier era, 3/5 of a citizen, or maybe even less, Cochav. So we have a massive challenge. And so my point, Charles, and with this I end, is that American Jews are still coming to terms, I believe, by and large, with the reality that there is a war. This is not a skirmish. This is not a battle that will quickly disappear, that will not allow people to return to the notion of America as the promised land. Anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism have been fused, not that they weren't before, but in a way that it is unavoidable to understand and to see, except for those who are willfully blind. Are we in a war posture here? Do we have a war cabinet here? Do we have an ongoing dialogue between Israeli leaders and American Jewish leaders that is not organization by organization with competition and turf disturbing the conversation? I still see us as several steps behind Israel in recovering from October 7th and understanding the new playing field, the new playbook that's required, and the new circumstances that will propel us to ensure our place in America, the strength of the U.S.-Israel relationship, and the maximum unity, to the extent possible, of American Jews who number between 6 and 7 million, and tens of millions of others in the United States, who, if they understood, would share our goals and share our objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Thanks for your insights and wisdom. So apropos what you were saying, we have about 25 minutes for Q&A. So based on what you were saying, we have a question from Trisha Ullman, and she's saying, what are we waiting for? Isn't this the ideal moment to hit back at Iran's nuclear capabilities and its oil fields? Is this sort of the moment that we've been waiting for, in the sense? And then just to add to it, Trisha's comments, and maybe to Sima, I know the United States has for a long time, for many years, promised that they will never allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. Estimates by American government officials and the international community puts Iran's capability of developing a nuclear weapon within weeks. It's very close, it would seem. So why, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but why the hesitancy? Why did Biden say last week, not to hit the nuclear issue, the nuclear weapons or the infrastructure, not to hit the oil fields? Why is the United States, what are they doing? Why this hesitancy, and why so close to the wire at this moment when the region's on fire?
Well, that's a question that we are asked in the last weeks since the second attack of Iran. You are correct by saying that Iran is very close. I think it's very close to a fissile material for a military device, not for the device, but that's not important. It's a question of short time. I think it is a time. Iran is weak. Iran, that we don't have Hezbollah as the strong retaliation on Israel that was planned by Iran if the nuclear sites are attacked. I think, but I think Israel cannot do it on its own. It is too big for Israel on its own. It could be the proper time. It could be, but we are in elections a month, less than a month from elections, and we know that this is something that might change the whole scene of the elections in the US. So I think it's impossible to even imagine a mutual attack by Israel and the US, even if the attack is only by Israel and the US will give its back to Israel. I don't see it. And as you mentioned, President Biden has said that it is not on the nuclear side, shouldn't be on the nuclear side. And I also ask myself whether after a year of a war that is not at the end, a very difficult war now also in Lebanon, the very first stage of the airplane of only the Air Force is already is there, but not only Air Force, it's also ground attacks. And we have to remember Israel is a small army, very good army, but a small one. And to start a war when we are still in Gaza and still in Lebanon, to start such a war with Iran, I think it's risky. It could be done only together with the US, and we don't have the US on that. So it might be that history will blame us for not using this moment, but I think it's from Israel's point of view, it's not the proper time.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else want to contribute? Cochav, any thoughts?
I have a general thought. First of all, it's interesting that the leader of the opposition, Yair Lapid, just released a statement calling upon the government to attack in Iran and to attack its nuclear, bases. So it's just to add this. While Sima was speaking, I was thinking about that as an interesting fact. And I want to add to the table here another crucial threat. We're talking a lot about the war in Gaza and about the war in Lebanon and about Iran. I come from a 2 days conference at the International Anti-Terrorism, Counterterrorism Conference, and I think we're missing one big strategic arena. And this is, we speak a lot about how international organizations have failed us, but I'm scared that it's much worse. It's not that they have failed us in a way that, it felt like a betrayal. It was, as I said, dehumanizing. But what worries me deeply is that we're seeing an international system that is working against us. I feel that I truly fear the fact that it's I'm seeing again and again how the social media of the UN is used to demonize us. I see the General Secretary of the UN continuously ignoring the human suffering in Israel in ways that provides misinformation to the world. And it's just I feel like I can't convey the deep understanding of the nuanced ways in which now the UN system is working against us as a people, as a country. So I just felt like I want to bring this to the table tonight.
Thanks. And unfortunately, I understand what you're saying, and I kind of agree with you. And the thing that terrifies me, and David had mentioned it, that we found tens of billions of dollars coming from Qatar. Qatar has a bayah, a spiritual oath to the Muslim Brotherhood, So they adhere to the religious worldview of the Brotherhood, its edicts and fatwas, etc. And they're funding, we found tens of billions of dollars going to American universities. And they know if you influence the most sensitive institution in a democracy, mainly education, these were young Americans go to become citizens, learn how to be citizens. And if you can influence an entire generation, and they've been doing this for decades, it's going to have an impact. So future professors, policymakers, journalists, people who affect public discourse are now being educated in a skewed way. And the thing that shocks me the most, and I don't think it's necessarily anti-Semitism or even anti-Israel politics, but in dealing with this in Washington, it's the university lobby. The university has a very powerful lobby in Washington, and they want the free flow of money and people, and they don't want to have any oversight. And their presence is very powerful in DC, and it's an uphill battle, I think, to have an influence where people's minds are being shaped.
Charles, can
David, yes, go ahead.
if I could quickly add, please. Firstly, on this point, I think the problem is even more serious with Qatar in Washington, because the fact of the matter is that despite all of these disclosures that you're referring to, U.S. administration policy is going exactly in the opposite direction. In 2022, Qatar was elevated by the United States to non-NATO major ally status. And most recently, Qatar became the first Arab country to get the visa-free regime from the United States. So we need to understand, Charles, what exactly is going on and how far has Qatar penetrated into Washington decision-making circles. By the way, I would add to our Israeli friends, Israeli confused policy on Qatar until at least recently has not helped this situation either. Whether that can be clarified in a very complicated situation, I understand, is something else. On Iran and the questions of Tricia Ullman and others, I think we have to understand several things. As was said, we're on the eve of an American election. A strike on Iran by the United States with Israel, without Israel, would certainly not advance the political interests of the administration in office, number one. And number two, we have to understand that for the Obama administration and its veterans, including many of the leaders in the current administration, the Iran deal was the single most noteworthy foreign policy achievement of the 8 years of that administration. Those people bought into it, not just transactionally, but I believe they bought into the transformational nature at the heart of what the Obama administration believed the deal could achieve. And finally, Cochav, I couldn't agree with you more about the betrayal, not just the failure of the UN system. And here, given numbers, because it's largely a numbers game, the Arab League begins with its 22 member states. It expands to the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, with its 56 or 57. It then expands to the non-aligned movement, and you have presto, in any UN body, a clear majority, and that's without even bringing other states into the picture. The only way to deal with this, at least I believe, is for the United States to step up our own activities in the UN system with UN member states, at least to try and reverse some of the lopsided votes. I don't think we've been making sufficient démarches as a country to other countries that might get away by abstaining or being absent. At the very least, even if we can't achieve a numerical majority, we need to create a moral majority, even if it's a numerical minority. And we haven't even been able to do that, as the last UN General Assembly vote regarding Israel displayed. With the exception of Pacific Island nations and the Czech Republic and one or two others, our other putative allies were all in the abstention column, if not in the opposition column. Only the United States has any power whatsoever in this respect. The question is prepared to try to exercise that power and expend political capital or not.
Thanks, David. So here's a question that's been mentioned by several people in the Q&A. So from your perspective, as the American election looms and it's less than a month away, forget the domestic situation in the United States for a moment. In terms of foreign policy, what are your comments on if the Republicans or the Democrats win, if it's Harris or Trump? From your perspective, what will be the implications for the Middle East?
Well, first of all, to be clear, that Harris and this Harris are not members of the same family. So please note that there should be no misunderstanding. And number two, as I said earlier, Charles, I'm a lifelong nonpartisan. Even my late mother, until her death, did not know how I voted in American elections. I don't believe that Jewish political activists here gain by choosing sides. When the pendulum inevitably swings, we don't know, at least I don't know, how a Kamala Harris administration would differ in foreign policy and national security from the Biden administration. I don't know, because I don't think it's been laid out. I don't think that the debates that we've seen, the interviews we've seen, few though they all are, have given us much insight into what may be different. And in the case of President Trump, we had 4 years of President Trump, and in a sense, I don't know that it will be that different. Although I think one area of potential difference is that in the beginning of his first term, he brought with him some very serious people, like General Kelly and McMaster, maybe reflecting a certain lack of confidence. But once he gained that confidence, together with the swagger that comes with Trumpian confidence, in a second term, we may see less reliance on the Kellys and the McMasters and more reliance on his own instinct, which he has allowed himself to believe prevented war for 4 years and allowed him to make assertions, as we've seen, such as, I can resolve the Israel-Hamas war overnight. I can resolve the Ukraine-Russia war overnight. Now, there would be those who say, yes, he can. Give him the chance. He's unpredictable. He wields a big stick. He scares the bejeebers, not just out of allies, but out of enemies because of his unpredictability. Maybe it's a smart weapon. But we have one administration potentially we don't know much about, and the other perhaps we have too much information about.
Thanks, David. Sima, any thoughts?
I just will say one or two sentences, and then there is now the memorial ceremony of the families, and I think it's important that we also join that. I'll say that what I know is that I'm very worried from both administrations when it comes to the nuclear program. I know that from the book of Barak Rabi that the prime minister was hoping that Trump will attack the program, and he said he didn't want to do it. And I think I believe that the Harris administration, if it will be also very reluctant to go for such a dramatic step, and will try to go for negotiations like the Iranians are trying to suggest now. I only hope, and this is something I was 3 weeks ago in Washington, and I tried to persuade whoever I could that if there are negotiations, it should be only done under the situation where Iran doesn't continue its program during the talks. They stop doing everything and not using the time in order to advance their program. And there should be some red lines, very concrete red lines, as well as the October 25, which is the last opportunity of this, what is called the snapback, according to the JCPOA, which is bringing back all Security Council resolutions, sanctions on Iran, without the possibility of the Russians and the Chinese to veto it. So I think we are getting into a very short time frame any new administration in January, and October is the end of snapback. We don't have even half a year because a lot of things have to happen before. I'm very, very worried because it takes time, as far as I know, from previous time, until all the jobs are there and are ratified by Congress and everything. So I am very, very concerned with this, with the developments next year.
Thanks, Sima. Cochav, any thoughts? Oh, you're muted. No, okay.
I was just, I saw the question here about how can we use that knowledge, the knowledge about everything we've realized after October 7th to fight the threats that we're seeing and the threat against our right to self-determination. I feel like it's too early to answer. I feel like we've been after a year of grief, after a year of processing these different dynamics around the world and understanding now we just need to start and understand how to respond to this. I think we are losing our right to self-determination in ways that we've never seen before. And I couldn't agree more with Sima of the fact that this should have been a global war. It should have been the United States by our sides in different aspects. And it was raised also by the other speakers. But from the very beginning, I thought that we need to do every effort to work in coalitions. And it's just that the situation is so impossible that I think we just need to see how the future develops. So I don't know I'm sorry that I don't have a better answer.
I understand. It's also, as you're speaking, I'm also thinking though that the essence of Zionism was the self-determination of the Jewish people, that we take our future into our own hands. And perhaps that's an important lesson that the founders of Zionism spoke about often. Yeah, I think these are obviously very trying times, but also I'm reminded as well that in crises, there's opportunities. And in some ways, perhaps, we were on the brink of very serious problems before October the 7th in Israel and in the diaspora. There was disunity and a lot of cleavages. And perhaps, the silver lining in this crisis is that we could emerge stronger and more united and more focused within Israel and also within the diaspora of our connections to our culture and to the land of Israel from the diaspora and from within Israel. So one hopes. And I guess, yeah. And apropos of this, as Sima suggested, I think, first of all, I want to thank the speakers very much for being here on this somber day. First of all, and thank you everybody for joining. We had a lot of people who joined us online. And as Sima was suggesting, I think in the next few minutes, you can join online the ceremonies for the families. And as Sima said, I think it would be nice to take some time and just try to connect and, be a part of that at some level. And we shall have a happy and healthy year and be victorious in the year to come.
Amen.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Stay well, everybody.